On the edge of a lonely frontier town, a rancher thought he struck gold when he purchased a cabin deep in the wild country. For a man chasing peace and fresh beginnings, the deal seemed almost too good to be true. But the moment he pushed open the creaking door, his dream of solitude shattered. Inside the shadows sat a woman, her eyes wide with secrets she dared not tell. She wasn't supposed to be there, yet she was. And what she carried with her would soon drag him into a fight, far greater than he ever bargained for. The Old West was a land of second chances, but also a place where fortune and ruin danced hand in hand. Jacob Turner, a rancher hardened by years of toil under the blistering sun, had known both. After losing much of his herd to drought and debt, he longed for a fresh start. Word spread of a cabin on the edge of the Rockies, left abandoned after its owner vanished during the winter. It was modest, logs weathered gray, roof sagging in places, but it came with fertile land and, more importantly, solitude. For Jacob, it was a chance to rebuild, to escape the noise of towns where whispers of failure followed him. The deal was simple, almost suspiciously so. Papers were signed in haste, and Jacob wasted no time saddling his horse for the journey. As he rode through rolling hills and silent pines, he imagined the cabin waiting empty, a blank slate for him to carve his future upon. But even before he arrived, unease stirred. A thin column of smoke curled from the chimney when he first glimpsed. It was the porch, though old, bore signs of recent use. Wood freshly chopped, tracks in the dirt. The cabin he thought abandoned wasn't abandoned at all, and when he stepped inside, he would discover that solitude was the last thing fate intended for him. The door moaned as Jacob pushed it open, dust swirling in the slant of fading daylight. At first, the room seemed quiet, until his eyes adjusted. There, near the hearth, sat a woman. Her dress was plain, edges frayed by travel, but her posture carried strength. She didn't flinch, didn't flee. Instead, she stared at him with a gaze equal parts defiance and fear. Jacob's heart thudded. The cabin was supposed to be empty. Who was she? Why hadn't anyone told him? The woman introduced herself as Clara, though she offered little else. She claimed the cabin had been hers for months, left behind by a family who never returned. She had nowhere else to go. Her voice trembled with both conviction and desperation, and Jacob sensed she was hiding more than she revealed. Over the next days, tension hung heavy. Jacob considered forcing her out, but something held him back. Strange signs began to surface. Shadows, lurking near the tree line, bootprints in the mud, the distant sound of horses when none should be near. Clara seemed constantly on edge, eyes darting at noises, hands clutching a worn locket around her neck. At night, Jacob overheard her whispering to herself, prayers or perhaps memories. Slowly, the truth began to bleed through. Clara was not just a squatter. She was running from men who wanted her silenced. She had witnessed something terrible in town, something that threatened powerful men who would rather see her buried than heard. As days stretched into uneasy weeks, Jacob wrestled with his choices. If he turned her away, she would surely die. If he sheltered her, he risked drawing the wrath of whoever hunted her. And the more time he spent with her, the more he realized she was not a burden, but a soul weathered by hardship, much like his own. Then came the night when torches flickered, in the distance. Men on horseback, moving with quiet precision, circling closer. Clara's past had found her, and Jacob's cabin, once a sanctuary, had become a battlefield. The night erupted with violence. Torches cast long, twisting shadows across the cabin, walls as riders dismounted. Boots thudded on dirt. The men called out, demanding Clara. Their voices dripped with menace, promising Jacob safe passage if only he handed her over. But something inside Jacob hardened. This land, this cabin, it was supposed to be his chance at redemption, and now perhaps fate had placed Clara in his path not as a curse, but as a test. He refused to let her fall into their hands. The attackers advanced, and the cabin roared with chaos. Shots cracked through the night, splinters flying as bullets tore into wood. Jacob returned fire with steady hands, his rifle echoing through the trees. Clara, far from helpless, revealed her own courage. She loaded cartridges, steadied his aim, and even fired when the moment demanded. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. When the dust settled, 2 men lay wounded, the rest fleeing into the darkness, their threats swallowed by the pines. Silence returned, broken only by the ragged breaths of those who survived it. In that moment, Jacob looked at Clara, not as an intruder, not as a burden, but as a partner in survival. Her secret was out, her enemies known, yet together they had stood their ground. And in doing so, they forged a bond that no paper deed or legal claim could ever match. By dawn, the smoke cleared, and the land fell quiet again. Clara told Jacob the full truth. She had witnessed a killing ordered by men of influence, and her silence was worth more to them than her life. She had been hiding ever since, clinging to the cabin as her last refuge. Jacob listened, then simply nodded. Whatever haunted her past, she would not face it alone anymore. The cabin was no longer just his. It was theirs, forged in blood and fire, defended by courage. Word spread of the attack, but neither Clara nor Jacob bent under pressure. Instead, they built a life rooted in defiance of injustice, each day a quiet victory over those who sought to crush them. In the Old West, survival was often measured not in acres owned or cattle herded, but in the courage to stand when others would fall. Jacob had found more than a cabin. He had found purpose, partnership, and redemption. And so the question lingers. In a land where the powerful preyed on the weak, how many others dared to defend what was right, even when the cost was everything?